Today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to freeze time and take a snapshot of our planet on one single, incredibly turbulent day. A day where it felt like everything was happening all at once. Okay, let's get into it. So the date we're zeroing in on is Monday, April 20th, 2026. Just one day. A single 24-hour spin of the Earth. But as you're about to see, this was a day that really pushed the world right to the edge.
I mean, it really makes you stop and think, right? Just how many critical, world-changing events can possibly unfold at the same time all across the globe? Well, that's exactly the question we're going to explore.
All right, so here's how we're going to break down this absolutely chaotic day. We'll start with how the world was basically teetering on a knife's edge, focusing on a huge flashpoint in the Strait of Hormuz. Then we'll pan out to look at other ongoing conflicts, cover some really tough tragedies, and finish up with some major shifts in politics and the economy. So, first up, we're heading to this one narrow strip of water that managed to put the entire planet on high alert. I'm talking about the Strait of Hormuz, which basically became the heart of a global crisis that just blew up out of nowhere. So, why all the fuss about this one strait? Well, think of it like one of the most important arteries for the entire global economy. A huge chunk of the world's daily oil supply has to pass through this single choke point. So, yeah. If anything happens here, it sends massive shockwaves everywhere, instantly. And on this particular Monday, something definitely happened. The whole thing escalated so fast it was stunning. It was like a four-step chain reaction. First, the U.S. Navy disables an Iranian ship. Boom. Iran retaliates almost immediately by shutting down the entire strait. The result? Oil prices go through the roof, which basically forces both countries to scramble to the negotiating table before this thing spins into a full-blown war. And make no mistake, this isn't just some low-level chat. The U.S. is sending Vice President J.D. Vance to the talks in Pakistan. That tells you everything you need to know about how seriously Washington was taking this. They were trying to pull back from the brink. This right here perfectly captures the tightrope the world was walking. You've got direct military action on one side, the disabling of that ship, and on the other, you've got this urgent push for diplomacy, with negotiators literally landing in Pakistan. These two things, war and peace, were happening at the exact same time. But here's the thing you gotta remember. This huge crisis in Iran, it wasn't happening in a vacuum. Not even close. All around the world, other long-running conflicts were also hitting their own boiling points. I mean, just look at what was happening in Ukraine. It's this wild dual reality. On the exact same day that Ukraine announced it pulled off a successful military strike deep inside Russia, its top diplomat was signaling that President Zelensky was actually ready to sit down with Putin for peace talks. It's a war being fought on two totally different fronts, the battlefield and the negotiating table. And, just to add another layer of complexity to all of this, reports were still coming out about Russia's recruitment tactics. The country was facing a lot of international heat for allegedly bringing in citizens from Africa to fight on its front lines. This just shows you how incredibly fragile any glimmer of hope can be. Over in Lebanon, a 10-day ceasefire was a huge relief, especially for aid groups. But that relief was just shattered. An attack over the weekend killed a UN peacekeeper and injured 3 others. A really grim reminder of how quickly things can fall apart. Okay, we need to shift gears a little bit here from human conflict to outright catastrophe. Because beyond all the wars and the crises, this day was also scarred by a series of just devastating tragedies that hit communities all over the world. In northeastern Japan, the planet itself just unleashed its power. A massive 7.5 magnitude earthquake struck, triggering a tsunami warning and sending terrifying tremors all the way to Tokyo. Just an unbelievable force of nature. Then, in South India, a horrific industrial accident. An explosion just tore through a firecracker factory in Tamil Nadu. It was a terrible tragedy that took the lives of at least 23 people, leaving an entire community just reeling. And in the United States, this is just unspeakable. A mass shooting in Louisiana, and the victims were 8 children. Just a truly heartbreaking loss that sent shockwaves well beyond the local community. And finally, over in Malaysia, a massive fire just ripped through a floating village. The blaze was so intense, it destroyed hundreds of homes, leaving countless families with nothing and kicking off a huge rescue effort. So for our final section, we're going to look at how, Even in the middle of all this chaos and tragedy, the gears of politics and the economy just kept grinding away. Nations were making big moves, and industries were still planning for the future. Let's start in Europe. Early results were coming in from Bulgaria's elections, and it looked like a really decisive win. The Progressive Bulgaria coalition pulled off what you'd call a landslide, grabbing over 44% of the vote and really setting a new political direction for the country. Japan, meanwhile, was having an absolutely insane day. Think about this. At the same time the country is dealing with the aftermath of a massive earthquake, its government is also in high-stakes talks with the UK about the Iran crisis and making a huge policy move to ban Chinese IT products over security risks. That is an incredible balancing act. And even with oil prices spiking and global markets on edge, big business deals were still chugging along. Over in the U.S. airline industry, Allegiant and Sun Country took one more step towards finalizing their huge merger. So after all that, we're left with this one big question. After just 24 hours of brinkmanship, tragedy, and political maneuvering, which of these stories are the ones that are going to echo into the future? Which ones will fade, and which will end up defining the days and weeks to come? It's impossible to know for sure, but one thing is clear. A single day can absolutely change everything.